Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of the DoughDr. Today for another pop-up demo, a little bit more notice than last week. I'm going to teach you the basically basics of chiffon cake. So we're going to get started. I'm just going to see people dropping in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll let a few more other folks drop in and then I'm going to get started. So chiffon cake, wait for it. Chiffon cake is a truly gorgeous cake. Look at that. I just made these this morning because I wanted to have some magic of TV. Light, fluffy, versatile. Next week we'll talk about customizing flavors for the chiffon cake. I was thinking if it's okay with you guys to do a short series on the chiffon cake because it's kind of the perfect time of year for this cake. Well, any time of the year is good for this cake, but especially summer because it's so nice and light. So welcome everybody, so nice to see you. And we're just gonna keep moving along. I am so sorry, but the Instagram technology does kind of fail me. So the last time I tried to put one of my bakers into the video, we had quite a kerfluffle. So just any questions, please drop them into the comments and I will definitely get to them. And they don't have to be questions about chiffon cakes. You might have questions from you're baking during the week or last weekend or stored questions, drop them in. Anyway, isn't that lovely? It's such a good cake. Now, if you're also thinking, well, where's the recipe? I will upload it to the website tomorrow, and I'll put a post in Instagram so that you know that it's live. So again, basic chiffon cake. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do, so here's the thing about chiffon cake. It is a classic American cake, just like angel food cake. And if you'd like, at another time, another demo, I can demo angel food cake. If you'd like to learn more about putting an angel food cake together beautifully, put it in the comments below. But right now, we're gonna stick with its cousin, chiffon. So chiffon cake, quintessentially American cake, that's gonna start with taking the dry ingredients and we're gonna sift them together. Now when you read the recipe that I'm gonna post on the website tomorrow, and just really quickly on my website, all the recipes are under the tab recipes and blog posts. Oh, BTW, if you're new to watching the DoughDr, my website is bakingwithcolette.com. All right. So the chiffon cake starts with a base, and that base is comprised of the dry ingredients, cake flour, and pretty much it has to be cake flour. Because of that super light texture, cake flour is the lightest of all the flours we work with, and it's the best choice. Will it work with all-purpose? Yeah, but it might just be a little bit tough. And this is one place where that internet substitution for cake flour doesn't work so well. All right, so now let me just make sure. I don't want to put my cream tartar, that's for later. So I have cake flour, I have salt, and I have baking powder. So we're gonna sift that into a large bowl. The other thing we have to do is we have to preheat the oven to 350 degrees, and we have to prepare our pans. Now, if you really love making chiffon cakes, you want to get yourself pans that are 3 inches tall. If you don't have 3-inch tall pans, I'm going to show you how to set up a collar for your pans. So we've got that sifted. I just want to get things out of the way, and the oven is on, so make sure you turn on the oven. All right, now let's see, here we go. Little bit of flour on my little station here. So you're going to sift the dry ingredients, and then into the dry ingredients the vegetable oil is going to go. Now for this cake, I know we talked about vegetable oils last week and shortening. For this cake, it can be anything. It can be canola, it can be corn, it can be soybean, it can be a mixed veg oil. It can be safflower, sunflower, grapeseed, whatever you like to use for your vegetable oil, all right? And what we're gonna do, well actually what we're gonna do is we're gonna stop. We've got everything sifted, our oven is on, and we are going to take care of the pans. Because they're at my elbow. Let me see if there's any questions. Nope? Okay, great. So I'm gonna make 2 8-inch cakes. And for chiffon cakes and angel food cakes, we don't grease the pans. Chiffon cake is an egg foam cake, and it needs to be able to climb up the side of the pan and grab on like Spider-Man, or else it's gonna slide down and collapse. So we're gonna take, punching myself in the face here, we're gonna take, I'm using pan goo, and I will provide that recipe tomorrow as well, because I hate pan spray. But you could do a light spray, just a little bit on the bottom and a little bit on the sides so that your parchment paper sticks. But no grease on the parchment paper. If you see that in a chiffon cake formula, they don't know what they're talking about. Oh my God, disaster. It just slides down the side of the pan. All right, so I have my circles pre-cut, and they're just gonna fit in the bottom like this. And then I have 4 strips of parchment paper, and ideally we want these strips to come up about no more than 2 inches. If our strips are too high, we run into trouble. So you can see there's 1, and then I'm gonna piece in another strip. Now, what I do so that the strips stick together, I have a brush with my cake goo, which is a DIY, you must be thinking, what is she talking about? It's a DIY pan release so that we don't have to fill the landfills. I know they're already full already with evil cans of pan spray. Ugh, just the worst. My regular viewers, you're like, oh, we have heard that rant many times. I grab my scissors and I go in and I trim. I don't need that much of an overhang. Right here is fine. Now when we pour in our cake batter, we're gonna make sure that the parchment paper collar is going to be flat against the side of the pan. If you go on a chiffon cake tear after making this cake and you invest in the 8x3-inch pans, you still want the parchment paper in the bottom. It'll help with easy release. So very important. All right. So these are ready. Oops, I didn't trim this one. Just so there's not a lot of excess. All right. Now, I also have a sheet pan ready. For 150 years, I taught production baking. And when working in production, either as an instructor or as a baker, everywhere I worked, we put cakes on a baking tray. Sometimes because that's how they needed to get into the oven, if it was a big rotating Baxter oven, or just for the sheer convenience and ease of getting them in and out of the oven. And then also, it does provide a little bit of a barrier for the bottom and sides of the pan, at least this high up, so you don't get over browning, you know, because that can be upsetting. All right, let's recap for those who are just dropping in. I lightly greased the sides and bottom of the pan. I laid in a circle cut perfectly to the bottom. I have a parchment paper collar that's 2 inches over the top. 1.5 inches is fine as well. And now I'm going to put these over to the side, and we're going to finish making the bag. Let's see if there's any questions. So, oh, thanks you guys, that's so kind. I really appreciate that. So any questions about the pan prep and BTW, you can collar any cake pan. So let's say in the back of your cupboard you have like little 1-inch pans. They were very popular like back in the day because bakers didn't like to necessarily cut their cakes for layering. So there was a real trend to bake your layers separate, but the problem with that, we kind of got a little, we got dome tops, so that fell by the wayside. So you might have some of those pans left over from a bygone era, but you can always collar them. So please don't ever feel you can't bake because you don't have the right pan. And you can always send me a message if you have a question. I usually see my questions pretty quickly, and I can advise. All right, so now I've got the vegetable oil, and I'm going to actually make a little well in the center, and I'm going to dump this in the center because we're going to make a paste of these dry ingredients and the vegetable oil. So I'm using a wooden spoon, and I'm mixing from the center to the outside. Now this is going to be the final bowl, this is going to be the bowl that I mix the cake batter in, and you can use the mixer and the paddle attachment. I just didn't want to stop and have you guys wait while I wash the mixer bowl, because I don't have 2 bowls. And you know what? I'll get my hands in there too because I don't care. And I know I'm getting flour on the counter, but it's okay. We'll get it. So my oven is preheated, so that's groovy. Again, you can use the mixer if you have 2 mixer bowls. I think that's an amazing luxury. I do not. So if you have questions about egg whites, that's going to be our next step. And so, get those questions loaded, at least in your heads, and we will cover them. All right, there we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is clean my mess, and I need these ingredients to be in my bowl. Okay? All right. Actually, if you don't mind, I think what will work better if I use the mixer. So I'll just quickly wash the bowl. I really do need to order another one, especially if we start doing cakes. And also, what are your Saturday plans? What are you baking this weekend? And then, oh yeah, no, you don't, see that's, so PLZ is commenting, she always makes a maple walnut chiffon and always thought you needed to use a tube pan. See, that was the press release for ages. All right, so you saw me do that with a wooden spoon and with my hands, but now it is actually much easier in the mixer with the paddle attachment. Now the next ingredients that are going to go in are egg yolks, water, and vanilla extract. But what really helps, and not every recipe talks about that, is to take these ingredients and combine them. So what we're going to talk about next week is what to do to this water so we get some flavor, what we're going to sub out to get like an orange chiffon or a lemon chiffon. But right now we're going to stick with water. You could use vanilla bean paste if you have it. I'm just going to slosh it in right there. All right, and then I'm going to take my whisk. There we go. So I'm just making a plain vanilla. but next week we'll get into flavors. And that's going to be really fun. So probably we'll talk about flavors, I'll answer questions next week, and we'll finish one of these cakes next week as well, and that I think that would be great. All right. So you're using the paddle attachment to make the base. And I'm just going to start on low speed. And we're going to add this in 3 increments. Now I'm not a fan of getting splashed. So I'm going to stop the mixer, pour in about 1/3, and let it just catch. Let it just catch. It smooths out pretty quickly, but the mixer on low speed is 4 times stronger than we are, so we definitely have the advantage when we're using the mixer. But one thing about the mixer is there's gravity, and your ingredients draw toward the bottom of the pan, so it's essential that we scrape down. So let me show you what this looks like. See? It's pretty thick, but we're just going to take our spatula, we're going to scrape down, and I'm going to add the next 1/3. Okay. This on here. You could pour it in nice and slow, that would be okay too. Or you could, if it feels sloshy, you could turn it off and add it. That's the new word for today, sloshy. So the name of this method, sandwich, is Chiffon method. In modern times, it can also be called the foaming and blending method, but this cake is named after the fabric. This cake was invented in the 1920s when chiffon dresses were all the rage, and not polyester, beautiful silk chiffon dresses. Light, gossamer, you know, lovely clothing. And I'm going to try to pour. So that's the final 1/3. And then I'm going to reach over here and grab my big bowl that I mixed that original solid paste in. You don't want to overmix this, just until it's smooth, just a couple minutes, start to finish. Oops, I'm just throwing stuff everywhere. I have to get my glasses adjusted. They are falling down. And then I'm just going to pour this in here so you guys can see it. Not too bad. I didn't get really stickage on the bottom of the bowl. And now I'm going to quickly wash this bowl, so talk amongst yourselves. I will be right back. And we do need every bit of this batter, so scrape the bowl. And that should be a general rule for all your baking. Okay, there we go. And this recipe will be in grams, so you definitely need your scales. No cups. No. You guys can't see behind me, but I have this kitchen organized so that I can film and grab everything. I did a tour a couple thousand posts back of the kitchen. All right, so make sure the bowl is grease-free, because if we are making a meringue, then what happens if we have grease in the bowl? Danger. That could be bad, because it's not going to, the fat is going to get in the way of the air bubbles in our meringue forming nicely. If you worry about it, you can take a little vinegar on a paper towel and wipe out the inside of your mixer bowl. And that little bit of acid also helps the egg whites open up. We are going to add cream of tartar. Now this does, I know I've been pretty casual and I'm just letting this sit here. This does have to be relatively thick, so we might remix that before we add the meringue. So what's going to happen is we're going to make a meringue with a firm peak, and for those of you who make macarons, same peak as the macarons. And I've got my bowl wiped out. I have my whisk attachment, my egg whites, and this recipe takes 8 eggs. So I know we were doing some talking about like saving money with our baking. So it's $2 if you're able to get your eggs for about $2.99 a dozen, which is what my local Trader Joe's sells large eggs at. There's $2 worth of eggs in this cake. All right, so now we're gonna add the cream of tartar. So cream of tartar needs to go in early. I kind of cringe when I see recipes where the cream of tartar is added after the mixture is foamed. So cream of tartar and egg whites, and if you don't have cream of tartar, it's okay. Your egg whites will still whip up. Now I'm sorry about the noise. I'm looking for questions. Yep, it's literally called the chiffon method, named after the beautiful fabric that was so popular in the day, because this cake is light, fluffy, and at the same time, it's sturdy enough to make a good, 4-layer cake that then can be incorporated into a tiered cake. You can make it in layers. You can make it in cupcakes. You could do a sheet pan and jelly roll a chiffon cake. It's really, really versatile. So we'll just keep exploring, maybe one more session with the chiffon, maybe 2 more sessions with the chiffon. We'll see. It's up to you guys. You let me know, all right? And again, if you'd like to learn more about angel food cake, put that in the comments. All right, so we have egg whites, and they're from Shell Eggs. I have had terrible luck with liquid egg whites. I hate to report that to you. I want them to work so badly because they do save us money, but I just end up throwing them out. And then I use up sugar because I throw out sugar and I throw out the liquid egg whites because they just don't foam up properly. And the reason is, it makes sense, right? They have shelf stabilizers added to them. So when this looks like cappuccino foam, can you guys see that? No peak, nothing. That's when we're going to rein in our sugar, and then we're going to turn up the speed. Any questions? What's the trick to, Baker Girl has asked, what's the trick from keeping a sponge cake from cracking when you roll it? Thickness. And also if there's a little fat in the recipe, that really helps. Put a pin in that one and we'll talk about it. Okay, so now I'm going to rein in my sugar, which is kind of like 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And if you get sugar up the side of the bowl, it's okay. Just stop, scrape it down, totally fine. I'll use one of my little baby spatulas here. I did get some sugar up the side of the bowl. All right, now we're going for that firm peak. So we're gonna let this rip to about medium high, and then I'll probably turn it up again. So when we're whipping egg whites, we don't necessarily want to go 0 to to 60 right away. We're making air bubbles. So we want those air bubbles to develop kind of in a nice, calm manner. So we're on medium speed to get to that cappuccino foam. Then we rein in our sugar, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. Then we're going to go to medium-high speed. And that's usually, I know everybody's mixer is different. You know, even within KitchenAid, there's different power motors. But typically we're at around 8, all right? And then when it looks like it's tripled in volume, we're going to go all the way. What's going to happen is you'll be able to see the lines on the and it's just going to get more volume. And you want to stay with it because unlike this, you can overwhip very quickly. Okay, so this isn't too bad, right? And another thing that's really important to know, and nobody tells you unless you're in a pastry class, the more sugar, the higher percentage of sugar in the meringue, the less likely it is to overwhip super quick. All right, now what I do is I tap off the excess of my whisk attachment. I dip it in the meringue, just enough to catch some off the end, and then I flip it up, right? And that peak is pretty droopy, but I'm really learning nothing from that peak. It's this angle that's telling me what I need to know. So a soft peak is at 10 o'clock, a medium peak is at 11, firm is at about 11:30. So you guys, you let me know, do you think I should whip this a little bit longer, or are we done? Put it in the chat. Take a look at that peak, take a look at the angle of the peak, and you guys tell me what to do. Now I will say, chiffon cake, unlike macarons, is pretty forgiving, but we want to do the right thing. All right? So let me know, what do you think? I'm looking for the comments to move. Should I whip this a little bit more? Yes. Yes. Just about another 30 seconds. And let's see what happens. Now if you over whip it, it's going to turn to like a shriveled cloud mess. So we don't want to do that. That was about 30 seconds. And when it's over whipped, it's really challenging. Ooh, see the difference? Look at this, you guys. And you don't want too much. This is often what people do. They try to look at it with that much on the end, and you can't tell. It's like the blob. It looks like the blob. And this would be your test for macarons as well. I have a class on Craftsy for macarons, and I go over this in great detail, like probably too much detail, but that's kind of my thing. Okay, see, that was 30 more seconds, and that's a perfect 11:30, and it's still got a really nice consistency. You guys can see here, it's stable, it's shiny. When egg whites are over whipped, they will begin to dry out. And literally, over whipping, the agitation is pulling water out of the egg whites. So this is great. And what I love about chiffon cake is we don't have to fold in flour. And folding in flour into a cake batter can be a bit of a pain in the tuchus. So this is kind of nice. So I'm gonna grab my whisk, and this is a pretty sturdy whisk. And I'm just gonna whisk this up, just make sure I loosen it off the bottom because it's been sitting there. All right. Okay. You need a spatula, a real spatula. This is not a real spatula. Make sure in your tools you have something that looks like this. Nice, wide, and flat. Doesn't have to be this one, but try to have one more pro spatula. I mean, these are great for lots of things, but for what we're gonna do next, we need this. All right, in 3 increments. Okay, so our first increment, we're kind of fast and loose, because what I'm doing with this first increment is I'm just lightening the batter, the original batter base, so that it'll accept the next 2 increments. I still want to keep it light. Okay? All right, now we're going to be all careful. Oh, I will definitely have my glasses fixed by next class, I promise. Next demo. Now, when you're folding, the curved side of the spatula is what is gliding along the bottom of the bowl. And this is, and I know many of you know this is a classic J-fold. Nice and light. We don't have to speed through this one. We're not catching a plane. We want to keep this batter nice and light and airy. I am being intentional and trying to get the base that's stuck on the bottom incorporated. Now, one thing you may not know is that for this kind of a batter, and really any kind of an incremental batter, it can be streaky, and when we're folding in flour, you can have a little flour residue in those early increments. It's really that last increment where we need to clean everything up. And if we have a little bit of streaking, it's okay, because in the early increments, we won't overmix. And because if we overmix, we get tunnels. We don't want tunnels. They're a drag. Tunnels have their place, but not in cakes. So this is our last increment, and I'm getting in there. I'm getting in trying to get every gram of this meringue. Okay. All right. Super light. And now I'm going to make sure that all my streaks will be gone. Can you guys see? Now, if your egg whites are over whipped, these little lumps, of egg white, they don't break down. So if that happens and you're going with it, which is, it's okay, grab a whisk and fold with the whisk, just like I'm doing with the spatula. And I'm going to show you that, because that is something, it's like a little unicorn technique. And sometimes when we're working by ourselves at home, if no one has told us we can do it, we don't know that we can do it. But you can. You can mix with a whisk. And as a matter of fact, if you're putting ingredients together, like for a mousse that has no flour, this is often the way to go. All right, okay, so it's gorgeous. Look at that, no streaks, very pretty. I'm gonna grab my cake pans and my scale, because we want nice even cakes, and the only way to do that is to weigh the batter, all right? It can get a little messy, but that's okay. We'll live. I'm so so sorry, I haven't even checked for questions. So please load up with questions. Now, on the formula, I'm gonna start doing something weird on the recipe. I'm gonna start telling you guys how much approximately your batter is going to weigh. The pros always know their batter weights. So in a perfect world, with all those ingredients, this should be 1,200 grams of batter. But there's always shrinkage. There's batter on the spatula. There's some egg whites on the whisk. Even as careful as I could be, there's still shrinkage. So what did I just say? 1,200 in a perfect world? So I'm gonna weigh out about 550 and we'll see what we have left over. And I'm gonna do that to camera so you guys can see, and I hope you can see, because it was one of the reasons I bought this scale. Uh-oh. You know what? If I go too crazy, I won't be able to see it. All right, so that's all right. Now make sure when you're working with the collar, it's sticking to the sides, and we're just gonna begin to plop this in. So I'm gonna do 550. Okay. Oop, I went a titch over, so I'm just going to grab a little bit out. And then I'm going to get this out of the way, and I'm going to grab the other pan, put it on the scale. You guys can see. That's all that matters, is that you can see. And I am adjusting so that my collar overhangs. Zero out my scale. Okay, don't forget that, and then we're going again. So, like I said, in a perfect world, sorry, I wanted to do it to camera, but I can't. In a perfect world, it would be 1,200 divided by 2 is 600. But it looks like this, we're just gonna be totally fine. They're both at 550. Great. Now I'm gonna grab my baking tray because I'm just not a fan of baking cakes directly on the rack. If you do that, you wanna be right in the middle of the oven. I'm gonna pop these in. This batter is deflating as I talk to you guys. And the next $64,000 question, I can hear it. How long? Before I give you the disclaimer, it's about 30 minutes, unless your oven runs hot. If your oven is a pretty steady 350, you've scaled 550 grams or so of batter into that 8-inch pan, it's on a baking tray, you can pretty much figure that it's gonna be about 30 minutes. If you underbake this cake, it collapses. It just goes in the middle. And it forms a very distinct eye in the center, which you can cut around, you know, if it's just right at the top. But I know it upsets you, so make sure to bake this cake long enough. If you have a window and a light, that's great, because you can observe through the window. Try not to open the door. If you don't have a window and a light, it's okay. Just refrain from opening the oven for at least 25 minutes, all right? You know this cake is done when a tester inserted in the center comes out clean. Also, it will spring back when touched, and that's basically it. If it's coming away from the sides, it's baked a little bit too long. Now that's not gonna happen with the Chiffon cake. So here it is, the finished cake that I put this in the oven at 10:30 this morning. just like I did this one. And if you have a 3-inch cake pan, you're going to cool it upside down. If your pan is shorter and you made a collar, you can't cool it upside down because you've got that collar. And you can't extricate the collar from the cake when the cake is really hot. You're going to have all kinds of problems. It has to cool for a good 10-12 minutes before you can peel off that collar. And then I was able to get it out of the pan, and I quickly inverted it onto a cardboard, and then I let it cool. The other thing, borrowing from sponge cakes, and some of you I know may have been in pastry school, before I invert it, I put sugar on the top, just a sprinkling of sugar to provide some traction so that it doesn't stick to the rack, or if I put down a sheet of parchment paper so I can flip it over back again, there's a little bit of sugar. And I'm going to show you that because my yapping about it doesn't do you any good. Let's just pretend that that's something I'm going to do right now. So I'm just going to grab another cardboard really quickly, or I'm just going to get a plate. Okay, this will work. And then I see there's questions, and that's it. I will be able to let you go in just a moment. So let's say I wanted to invert. I was getting, okay, we're going to pretend it's in the pan. So you would sprinkle a little sugar on top to provide some traction, and then flip it. It's always going to do that. That's totally fine. And as a matter of fact, we can remove that with our thumb after the cake is cold and has been, once it comes to room temperature, I would wrap it, I would put it in the refrigerator, and then it can be frozen for up to 2 weeks. But with that little bit of sugar on the bottom, see that? We had that was from before, but you can see the little glitter of the sugar, and it did not stick it all to the plate. So that's what I was going on about. And that can really help as well. All right, so this is a very vanilla basic chiffon cake, and I'll have the recipe up tomorrow on bakingwithcolette.com. So if you want to have one ready for next week, that would be super fun. And next week, we're gonna get into flavors, and then let me just check questions here. And then, oh yes, okay, we talked about, I wanted to put a pin in the cracking. Now it's been my experience, and that was from Baker Girl. So it's been my experience that the sponge cakes that crack are chocolate flourless, the most, are something like a chocolate flourless, which isn't very stable to begin with because it doesn't have the flour, or like a New England pumpkin roll, for Thanksgiving time. So Baker Girl, if you could let us know, and the live is going to finish, I should have asked earlier, but or we can talk about it next week, is there a particular type of cake, roulade, that is cracking on you? What cake are you baking that's cracking, and we can do an analysis of that. And then Pistol Packing Mama says angel food cake is her birthday cake. It's really wonderful. So we could do that after lemon chiffon. So really, really good comments. All right. And then can we use this batter to make roulade cake or Swiss rolls? Yes, you can. And for that half sheet pan that I just loaded into the oven, it would be about 400 to 450 grams. I'd say about 450 grams of batter for that pan. All right, lined with parchment paper at the bottom. No collar, nothing like that. Just line it perfectly to the bottom. All right, so I think that's all the questions. And we've got, I think I just want to make sure, nope, that's it. So everyone, was our quick demo on basic chiffon cake. And this is an American cake invented right here in Los Angeles in the 1920s. We're just going to get into the versatility of chiffon next week. And I'll have a nice batch of buttercream made up, and we'll finish one of these cakes next week. All right? Nice and quick. All right? You guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I really have missed you, and so I'm just throwing pop-ups so we can have a little bit of Saturday baking time together. All right, take care, enjoy your baking, and I'll see you next week. Bye.